one of the ways you have to cope with that is, I know it sounds so horrible, especially like given the hindsight of history and all the wars that humanity has been through, to like, if you're that kid and you're in his shoes, like if you want to be able, if I'm trying to imagine how, I will never even get close, but if I was trying to imagine how I could cognitively cope with that for the rest of my life, like I would have to, I would imagine I would want to think of that person as subhuman or not human, the person that I took out, you know what I mean? Because if I think about that too much, or think about that person being the same as me, that hurts. But if I think of that person as like, who knows what the truth is about him? Like we know we're on a mission. You're on a mission. You have your orders. You have to do this. There's no questioning anything. Like you're doing what you're doing to save your life and your brother's lives. But to cope with that, you no matter what the fucking context is, who cares? Like that person is not a real person. That's how I could cope with it if I'm to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the battle. I mean, I agree with you 100%. This mentality that you have to take to it. But then as you grow older in life, like I think war teaches you, especially those moments, empathy at another level. And I think you just have to have more empathy for yourself than anything else. And whether they're right or we're right, who's wrong, I don't know. And I'll never know until, I die and I meet my maker. But while I'm on this planet, I choose to say, hey, politics aside, it was my life or that person's. Mm-hmm. And it's just how you have to live with it.
And you say like another thing I think about all the time, but I think about it like in another aspect of, you see like young kids become really successful and make a lot of money at an early age, like in their teens or early 20s. It does something to people that are going through the normal stages of human development, from when you're born to when your brain stops developing. I think scientists or researchers have found out that your brain doesn't stop actually developing until you're like in your early to mid 30s.
Yeah.
And you're going through, there's certain things that you have to go through in life through stages of development, growing up, like being bullied or whatever it may be, to become a well-rounded human being in our society, in the context of our world that we're in today. Like there's certain things you have to go through, but there's things that can happen that could fucking alter that trajectory so hardcore. Like the greatest example that I come up with is NBA players or NFL players. These kids that are straight out of high school and get handed millions of fucking dollars. Yeah. Like what does that do to your mind, to your ego, to your fucking relationships at that young of an age, compared to think of somebody who's already been through it, suffered, struggled, been broke, been fucking cheated on, whatever it may be. And then you finally, you're in your 30s, you've been through all this, then you achieve something like, I've been broke, I've been nobody, and now, I can enjoy the fruits of all of this. I've made whatever it is. Like in this example, it's people making millions of dollars. Like you have the context of the rest of your life to compare it against this success. So when you take, I guess, like trying to compare that with kids who are, you call them, they're men, but they're fucking in their teens or early 20s and they're doing this kind of thing, that has to severely fuck with your development through the rest of your life. Especially like sometimes these people are only deployed for a couple of years and then they're just back to normal life in the United States.
Yeah, Eric Church has a song, I think it came out like 2 years ago, Stick That in Your Country song. And one of the verses he says is so powerful. This is why I love Eric Church. Hope he watches this because dude's a legend. But he says in the song, tell that to the kid coming home from war, 23 going on 54. Stick that in your country song, something like that. And it's true because your brain just sees things. It's fast forward mode. It's such severe trauma and you're not prepared to see it. That now it's like, hey, you just skipped decades of your life where your brain was supposed to mature or equip itself to handle something like that. I don't think anything will ever truly equip you to handle that. And now all of a sudden you're supposed to backtrack and fill that gap
Right.
And that's where the struggle
Yes.
comes in big time.
Yes.
I told you yesterday, I was a liability when I got out. And I got out because my mother and my family, period, went through a lot of stress. That we say in the military that the toughest job in the Marine Corps, in my case, is either being the spouse or the mother of a Marine. Because you have to sit there, you're helpless, you're powerless, and watch your spouse go deploy to some of the most dangerous places in the world. And there's nothing that you can't just quit. You can't just say, hey, honey, why don't you get a new job? That's not going to happen, you know? It's also why I was single my entire time through the Marine Corps, because Marine Corps was my girlfriend.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's brutal. And coming out was harder than anything that I've ever done. Getting out of the Marine Corps. I was a Marine operating, literally walking the streets like I was still in war, essentially. I was so hypervigilant. My head was on a swivel. If I saw something stupid or something fucked up, I was going to fix it. That was my plan, to fix the world one asshole at a time. Jesus, that's a terrible, terrible mentality to have in life, because we've got a lot of stupid people. Yeah. But yeah, who knows how many years have been taken off my life due to the stress and PTSD of not just war, but the Marine Corps itself. It's pretty tough.
Yeah.
I love the Marine Corps. But
well,
yeah,
I mean, there's a statistic about how many ex-Marines and SEALs like take their own lives every single day. There's like a certain amount.
22.
There's 22 a day that take their own lives. That's unfathomable, man.
Hey, man, I used to hide this stuff because it was embarrassing, but if it can help somebody, that's kind of my mentality now. But I was there. I was ready to take my own life. And there was a whole chain of events that prevented me from doing so. But I think it could be a lot higher thank God it's not. But like, we need to put attention on that stuff.
Yeah, man. It fucks with your brain. It's just, it's not right. I mean, a lot of people talk about, PTSD, and I think a lot of people have kind of like a false sense of what PTSD and just sort of gloss over it. Like, think, okay, you came back from war and now you have, this post-traumatic stress disorder. But like, what is it to you, like in a personal sense? Like, how would you describe how it affected you personally? Like, I remember you said hypervigilance was a big thing, and you walked around with your head on a swivel and you were always like ready for conflict.
Yeah. I wanted conflict badly. It's the only thing that I really knew as an adult. When I was deployed, I was in a position to where if I saw something that was an injustice, I could fix it legally in any which way that I wanted. If I saw somebody look at me strangely and my intuition is telling me, hey, that's a bad person, he walks into his home, I'm going into your home and I'm going to figure out what your deal is. Mm-hmm. Because if I don't, you could be putting a bullet in my brain, the next day. Or if, I'm in a convoy, of vehicles, armored Humvees or MRAPs deployed, and, we're telling, a car to move out of the way and he refuses to do so, and I'm not on a schedule, I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to take you out of that vehicle. I'm going to search your vehicle, and then I'm going to get to know you. I'm going to write your info down. I'm going to figure out where you live, who you're related to, who you interact with, and I'm going to check on you. Now you've got me as a big brother, and you can't do that in the civilian world.
Right.
And I just think Americans in general, we sit here, it drives me nuts. We have all these people that just shit all over our country, especially our youth right now. And it's like, okay, do we have problems in our country? Absolutely. We're not perfect. Absolutely. We have problems. But if you think that this country sucks and this is the worst place to live, and, America is just this terrible, terrible place, then you haven't traveled. Mm. And I don't care if you traveled to Bali or Mexico for spring break. That's not traveling. Remove yourself from this society and go put yourself in the real world.